sure, just like many of you, the propaganda that comes from our politicians and our media these days just does not sit well with me. I call bullshit every single time I hear it. And when it comes to these fires, we keep getting told everything's being done and there's so much money coming towards it. Don't worry, we've got your back. We're all in this together, right? And I can't help thinking to myself, hang on a second, the money that you're talking about is fucking pittance. It's nothing compared to the money that you spend on things that you seem to prioritise. So I wanted to make a video showing exactly where the government's priorities lie. Check it out. These fires continue burning and people and wildlife continue to lose their homes and their lives. And our politicians are busy assuring us, the people, that everything possible is being done. So, just like the government is interested in knowing about every single financial transaction and every dollar that we spend to get a picture of who we are, let's apply that logic to them and have a look at what kind of people our elected leaders are and what their priorities are. Aerial firefighting efforts receive $15 million every year from the federal government, with a further $11 million being allocated to the fires in mid-December. Those figures might sound like a lot, 15 million and 11 million respectively, so let's just keep those in mind as we investigate things further. The states contribute the majority of funding to fire and rescue. New South Wales Liberal government recently cut the budget of the New South Wales Fire and Rescue by $28.5 million and cut the budget for the Rural Fire Service by $49.9 million. Seems like for a wealthy country like Australia, there's just not enough money to go around for emergency services. Let's take a look and see how these figures compare to the purchases the government have prioritised on our behalf with our money, shall we? On the eve of the election, the Prime Minister gave $15 million to one of his rich party donors. That was from money set aside to tackle black poverty. So we're already above the $11 million that he allocated for extra aerial firefighting efforts. The government gave double the annual aerial firefighting budget as a gift to Foxtel without any paperwork existing and refusing to release details about the gift. The government is spending almost $50 million to commemorate the 250th anniversary of James Cook's first voyage to Australia, including millions on a new Captain Cook statue at Botany Bay and nearly $7 million to recreate a voyage that Captain Cook never actually made. The government was happy to spend $80 million, nearly 8 times the boost that the aerial firefighters received, to buy water that actually doesn't exist. The government spends hundreds of millions of dollars on advertising propaganda aimed at us to convince us that they're doing such a fantastic job. Way more money than they allocate to an emergency in a time that the nation is in a crisis. Our politicians spend way more money on detention services of contractors that oftentimes they're associated with and making massive, massive profits out of. Now, we know our PM's a religious man, but he spends more than 20 times the amount of money that the aerial firefighters received as a boost in the way of school chaplaincy programs pushing religion harder in schools. Now, aren't we all very nice? We're spending $250 million of our money buying the Prime Minister a new plane, a plane which he's decided to dub Shark 1, which I'm guessing some kind of personal little ego stroke rather than something that's significant for the country. There's loads of examples of contractors being given multi-$100 million contracts, often without even needing to go through a tender process, and often corporations that are associated with tax dodging or are actually linked to the politicians and their families. The government gave $444 million of our money to a foundation called the Great Barrier Reef Foundation, again without it having to go through any kind of tender process. It's actually the largest donation made for an environmental project by the government ever, and more than 40 times the boost that the aerial firefighters received during this fire crisis. Now, who exactly is the Great Barrier Reef Foundation? Well, basically it's a bunch of politicians' mates in banking and big business. The government still can't explain why the money went to the foundation instead of being managed through the department or the Marine Park Authority, nor can it explain why the decision was taken without the foundation even being aware that it was being considered to carry out work on a scale completely beyond its historic capacity. Where did our money go? The government's upgrading and expanding the War Memorial, which is going to cost us $500 million. And it's money that experts in the field actually say would be much better spent on the veterans themselves. Now, the money given to the firefighters is starting to look really, really small in comparison, isn't it? Okay, we're officially into the billions now. The government gives out billions of dollars a year in franking credit refunds, basically refunds to people that hold shares. And this number is actually growing very rapidly every single year. The government hands out billions and billions of dollars every year in fossil fuel subsidies. dwarfing the amount of money given to the firefighters by hundreds of times. Our politicians spend billions of dollars every year on border protection policies, including $1 billion spent on detaining just over 1,000 refugees and asylum seekers on Manus Island and Nauru. That equals nearly $1 million per refugee. Where exactly is that money going and who's profiting off this? Now, the Liberal Party have still been pushing for more and more tax cuts for big businesses to the tune of $80 billion. An obscene amount of $17 billion of that would go to the big four banks, who we've seen committing all sorts of crimes revealed in the Royal Commission. Now, why is there not billions of dollars to go to a crisis in the time when the country needs it? Government spends hundreds of millions of dollars with contractors like Serco for call centre services for the Australian Taxation Office to chase down the tax debts of regular Australians, while we've just seen they're pushing actively for massive tax cuts to their friends. How is this okay? These numbers are just getting ridiculous now in comparison to what our firefighters and emergency services receive. The government's committed to spending $17 billion on strike fighter jets from a US military manufacturer. And on top of that, the developmental nature of the International Joint Strike Fighter program means that Defence does not yet know the final purchase price of future Australian JSF aircraft or their whole-of-life operating and support costs, yet they're happy to sign us up to this unlimited expenditure. Now, after the whole Saddam has weapons of mass destruction propaganda that was shoved down our throat, Australia joined the US-led F-35 program in a rush in 2002 without any tender process or any formal evaluation, and the aircraft was still only a brochure. The delivery schedule and costs were completely unknown, and now it's revealed that the F-35s that we're receiving and to enter service are inadequate for future strike operations. The National Broadband Network, which went from being a nationwide high-speed fibre optic network to a half copper, half fibre optic mishmash, has blown out to costing us nearly $100 billion. And on top of that, it's delivered us speeds in the 60 ranks in the world, slower than Grenada and Belize, and slightly faster than Kazakhstan and Borat. Can you see that the amounts of money that our politicians are happy to spend when it comes to sending money to companies that are owned by their mates or that their shareholders in or their families are going to benefit from? It's just unlimited. But when it comes to a national emergency like the bushfire crisis we're seeing, people dying, animals being roasted alive, there's not enough money here, have a few little crumbs, guys. Sorry. Our politicians are spending over $1 billion a year before construction's even started on our new submarine program, a program that's already blown out to going to cost us $225 billion for submarines that could actually be obsolete by the time they come into service. See that shit? Billions of dollars, tens of billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars in some cases of our money ready to be spent on things that are going to make politicians and their buddies super rich. Whilst the corporate media and the politicians throw so much propaganda and bullshit down our throats about these bushfires that it's infuriating. Now, I'm actually proud to say that some of this next footage is actually going to make you pretty stoked, was seeing how the reactions of some of these Australians and treating the Prime Minister in the way that he deserves to be treated. I think even they're being too nice in the way that they're doing it, but check this shit out. Our Prime Minister, as always, made sure he had his full camera crew on hand, ready for any photo opportunities to make him look the part. Despite attempts by the PM to reach down and physically pick up this firefighter's hand, this guy was not at all interested in doing so and told the PM exactly that. He actually lost his home in the fires and was understandably pissed off at the lack of support received by the PM and the federal government. He was actually so disgusted being in the same room as the PM that he actually got up and walked off when the PM stood behind him. But don't worry, Scotty from marketing spotted an opportunity outside though and reached to grab this mother's hand. She stated very clearly to the PM, "I'm only shaking your hand if you give more money to the Rural Fire Service." So what does he do? Upon hearing that, the PM makes a quick dash for the exit, leaving one of his escorts to physically manhandle the woman and stop her from being able to follow him. Other angry residents who are victims of the bushfires started yelling abuse at the PM outside for the absence of support they've received during this crisis. Many actually losing their homes while the PM was busy lapping up the beach vibes in Hawaii, having a great time. They made it very clear to him that he's not welcome, and the PM actually quickly made his escape back to his car, not having the courage to stay and deal with the situation that he's let build up to this point. Is his solution really simply a bunch of handshakes? Is that all our leader can actually muster up in a situation like this? That's actually quite pathetic. The former New South Wales Fire and Rescue Commissioner Greg Mullins has actually been trying to get an appointment with the Prime Minister since last April to warn the government about the extreme dangers of this exact event happening, but he was actually ignored repeatedly. It should actually make you very angry, like it does me, to know that more measures could have actually been taken and lives potentially saved had our leaders actually acted like leaders. Tragically, the lives of many brave firefighters were lost, and their families are left to deal with the loss without any real support coming from the politicians that were elected to lead the nation. Now, why would they deliberately ignore the warnings of experts? Why are they always focused on stealing more of our taxpayer money for themselves and their buddies? Why are they never actually held accountable? The answer to that question is really on us. It's our fault, if we're going to be honest. This crisis has really illustrated the insanity of putting the decision-making power over our lives and our future in the hands of a bunch of people that we don't even know. A bunch of people who have very little real-world experience, most of whom have never worked a real job or run a business in their lives and have just been career politicians ever since they left high school. The system we live in was set up in a time when we physically needed someone to visit the capital to represent our interests for us. The Australian Parliament was actually inaugurated in 1901. That's before the first Model T car from Ford was created, before the first powered aeroplane, before the invention of the tractor even. We're talking horse and cart, no telephone infrastructure, and certainly no internet. Given the technology we have at our fingertips this day and age, isn't it insane to continue a system of government where we tick a box on a piece of paper every 4 years and call that being represented? Why can't we all decide on every issue, on every piece of legislation, on the spending of every single dollar of our money? So for how long are we going to all keep paying our taxes and keep pretending and kidding ourselves that we live in a democratic country? I think that's pretty insane of us to keep doing that, given the crises that we keep watching over and over again. So I've actually made a separate video showing some of the amazing technologies and solutions that are available now and others that are being worked on that will actually deliver us a democratic country. So I'm going to put the link to that below, check it out, and hope you like some of my other videos. Thanks for watching.